When did you realize no parent should have to bury their child? After spending weeks watching the quiet kid in my class post pictures of firearms and write lists of students he wanted to hurt, I finally worked up the courage to tell Ms. Mudge about his plan for tomorrow after lunch. As I sat in her office showing her the screenshots on my phone, I couldn't stop thinking about my little sister Katie, who had 3 classes in that hallway, including the exact room where he'd written "Start here," and I was practically begging by the end. Ms. Mudge put her hand on my shoulder and promised she'd call an emergency meeting right away to make sure nothing happened to Katie or anyone else. I watched her walk briskly toward the principal's office with purpose. 20 minutes later, when I heard the announcement about a routine safety drill that afternoon, I felt the knot in my chest finally loosen. By the end of the day, seeing those security guards in the freshman hallway where the attack was planned made me so relieved I almost cried right there in the parking lot. Ms. Mudge even texted me that night to reassure me that police would be stationed at both entrances by noon the next day, and she'd personally keep Katie in the main office during lunch through 5th period. After I got that message, I told Katie I loved her before bed, grateful that Ms. Mudge had made sure it wouldn't be the last time. The next morning, everything shifted as I stood in the empty parking lot at 7 a.m. There were no police cars, no extra security, nothing different except the dread building in my chest. When I found Ms. Mudge, she firmly looked at me while explaining that some threat assessment team had decided overnight that the boy who'd literally written "after lunch today" wasn't credible enough for a real response. My voice cracked when I begged her to remember what she'd promised about keeping Katie safe, but she crossed her arms and suggested my anxiety for my parents' divorce was making me see threats everywhere. "You did the right thing coming to me." Those words echoed as I spent the morning desperately seeking help. The principal's secretary turned me away. The resource officer said he needed actionable intelligence. During 3rd period, I called 911, but they couldn't dispatch without an active threat. At 12:30, lunch began, and I positioned myself to watch the cafeteria, because if no adult would protect Katie, then I'd have to figure something out myself. At 12:45, when the quiet kid left early, heading toward the freshman wing with his hand pressed against something under his jacket, I followed him, but I was too late. The shot started before I could reach her. I sprinted to Katie's classroom to find Mr. Rodriguez already wrestling with the quiet kid in the doorway. He shoved him backward and held the door shut even as 3 bullets tore through him, giving students time to escape through windows. But Katie had been standing right by the door when the first shot came through, and Mr. Rodriguez couldn't shield everyone. The second I saw her go down, I screamed her name and ran to reach her, but there was already blood spreading across her pink sweater. I held her head in my lap, begging her to stay with me while she tried to speak, but only blood came out. Her hand went cold in mine as Mr. Rodriguez bled out beside us both, heroes who fulfilled the word that should have been kept by someone safe behind their desk. I didn't even notice the quiet kid had fled, or that everything had died down until 30 minutes later when Ms. Mudge did damage control. She sat across from investigators and told them I was just an anxious kid who'd made vague reports about concerning behavior with no specific threats. She told them I'd never mentioned today's date or shown her the maps with Katie's classroom circled. And when I begged them to check her notes from our meeting, she produced a file that somehow left out every urgent detail I'd given her. She actually suggested my grief was making me misremember our conversation. Everyone actually accepted everything she said to protect themselves from lawsuits, while my parents had to pick out a coffin for their 14-year-old daughter, and I had to live knowing I'd trusted the wrong person with my sister's life. 2 years later, Ms. Mudge's number appeared on my phone. I listened to her voicemail about her grandson's friend with a knife threatening bullies. She remembered I was the only student who'd ever accurately predicted an attack. "Please, I need to know what signs to look for. My grandson's life might depend on it." I didn't feel resentment, just the same need I'd had in her office wanting someone to keep their word about protecting kids, but I couldn't help her. She called 9 times over 2 days, growing more frantic. She pulled her grandson from school but didn't know what else to do. 3 weeks later, during a sleepover, the knife incident happened. Her grandson survived, but lost his left eye trying to stop his friend. I felt nothing, because her grandson got to survive the betrayal, and Katie never got that chance.